Welcome to A Taste of AZ podcast, where we interview everyone from James Beard award-winning chefs to local mixologists, winemakers, breweries, and so much more. We've got an awesome episode lined up for you today. But before we get into that, head to atasteofaz.com so you can subscribe to our quarterly magazine and email newsletter to find all of the best places to eat and drink around town. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Now let's get into the episode.
All right, so we are here in Tempe, right?
Tempe.
This is the. I wouldn't say this isn't even the newest, though, right? This isn't the newest spot of yours.
I mean, technically, across the street here at Aruma is the newest thing we've just opened.
What's that?
It's a little coffee shop.
Oh, I saw that sign.
Yeah,
that's your guys' place
That's
too.
Our place, yeah.
Dang, man, you just keep impressing me.
A lot of work.
you're a glutton for punishment in some ways, huh?
No, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I got used to in the last 8 years. I think I haven't had a year where I'm not building or doing something new.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's now gotten to the point where I need it.
I was gonna say it sounds like an addiction, man.
Yeah.
Well, dude, Armando, thanks for joining, man.
I appreciate you coming.
Dude, you've been a target of ours for a while. Just wanting to, with all the stuff that you guys do. I mean, you're a local legend. You and your wife, Nadia, right?
Yeah, Nadia.
Yeah, you guys kick ass. And then I was lucky enough to meet you at the Adam Allison, the wing throwdown.
Oh yeah.
Remember, you got thrust into being a judge. You were just trying to be a participant or just a consumer.
Just all supporting, baby.
Yeah,
it's all love.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. So it was cool. I got to meet you, and I've been wanting to meet you. But I wouldn't be able to. I didn't know who you were. Like to see you, right? I knew the name, and I knew the legend. But then when I was talking to you, you're like, "Yeah, I own a restaurant." I'm like, "Oh yeah, what restaurant you want?" Or and you start naming off. I'm like, "Oh shit, you're that dude." Yeah.
I live in the shadows, baby.
Yeah, dude. I love it, man. I love it. So, yeah. Once again, thanks for having us here, man. This is Cocina
Chiwas.
Cocina Chiwas.
Yeah.
Beautiful spot. I haven't eaten here yet, but I hear the food is incredible.
Yeah, you got to come through.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, this was a project that took us approximately almost 3.5 years to build.
Okay.
So it was a long process, and talk about punishment. This was one of the because we went through a lot of things. I think what happens is we started the conversations prior to the realities of COVID and everything that came through that, which on its own makes it, it was a difficult time on its own, but doing everything that we were doing at the same time made it, I don't know, more difficult, but for somehow bearable.
Okay. Like you'd been through the trenches a little bit and you kind of had a little bit of experience.
Yeah. What happens is, that there over the last 8 years, so many things that, the one thing that I've gotten used to is that everything changes.
Yeah.
Every single time that I think I'm comfortable, boom, something happens, something else, so I think, Cocina was one of those learning about everything, right? It's just when you build from ground up, it makes everything, kind of difficult. And coming from a spectrum of like where I'm from, where, everything I've usually done is restaurants that were already kind of there. So second generation. Yeah. So I just have to make do with what is there.
Yeah. And
then having the ability to kind of build it and shape it your way is actually more difficult than I expected. So too many options,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's and I would assume that's kind of the dream too, right? Where it's like, all right, typically we go into a spot and we got to, like you said, make do with what we have. Yeah. Where this is like, oh man, we can do whatever we want with it,
Absolutely.
Right? Which isn't all rainbows and ponies.
Yeah.
Right?
No. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because like I said, when you get started the way that kind of we did, this is just kind of a dream, and we're still living in that dream world of just, I think that's part of the reason why we're so hyped about doing new things. We have so many ideas, so much to give, and we don't have enough time or money to get it all done. So
sure. Yeah. That's the thing, right? Because if you find more money, then you're like, where do we get the time?
Exactly.
Right? And so let's go way back. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
So I'm from a little town called Sotomaines, in Namitipa, Chihuahua.
Okay.
I was born in Cuauhtemoc, Chihuahua. And basically, I lived there till I was around like 7 or 8.
Okay.
And then my dad decided that we were going to come in and live over here.
Okay.
So we migrated into Arizona. We actually went to Las Vegas for I want to say like 3 or 4 months, which I fucking hated. As I said, you come from a little town. I mean, like the town where we're from, there's probably around 3,000 people that live there.
Yeah.
And we went to Sin City.
Sure.
At 7, 8 years old, and it wasn't fun in any way. Like I remember having this idea of what America was, and it's very different to what I kind of got.
Okay.
I used to think, as silly as it may sound, like I used to think that McDonald's was almost like a Disneyland. You know what I mean? Like you make these fantasies in your head that you're like, oh, they have a playground and stuff. And so you get there and you're like, it's still beautiful. Don't get me wrong, compared to like where we're from. Like at that time, fast food or food restaurants in general aren't really a thing.
Okay.
In the smaller towns, you just kind of eat what you have, and that's that. So yeah, it's a huge shift for everybody. Yeah.
And then you're in Viva Las Vegas, right?
Yeah,
that's the adult playground. That's not the kids.
Exactly. We got there. The landlord, like me and my brother, we actually, we when you're from a small town, you kind of grow up with a lot of freedom, especially as a little kid. Yep. So you have the ability to like just wander the streets, and everybody knows your family. So, they kind of take care of you. They make sure, you stay away from too much trouble.
Yeah.
Then you come into a big city and you realize really quickly that, hey, you're not home.
Yeah.
Things are dangerous. The manager kept like grabbing us by our hand and like taking us back to the apartment we were living. So, it was a huge cultural shock, I guess.
Yeah. That is, I grew up in a small town in Ohio, and it was like, my wife and I talk about it all the time. She grew up in a small town in Minnesota, me in Ohio. And dude, I would like 8 o'clock in the morning, I get on my bike and my parents wouldn't see me until like 5 or 6 o'clock. Yeah. And they probably wished I would have stayed out later. Right. And
100%.
They don't know where I'm eating. I don't even know where I'm eating. I'll find some food along the way. Right. But we could explore. We could do, now my daughter's like, I'm like, if they go to the playground, the next neighborhood over, you're like, shit, man, I'm tracking them on my phone 100%. And stuff, So there's beauty to growing up like that.
100%. Yeah. I mean, in that same realm, what happens is, a lot of the things that you find out later in life that were beautiful were sometimes a dread when you were a younger.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I knew that, the ability to kind of just explore and have fun was something that I missed like immediately. You know what I mean? So then we left Vegas. Obviously, like we all hated it, and my dad found a job here in Arizona, so we came to Arizona, and a little bit different. Same, we came to some apartments. Did only had like another set of kids probably in that whole complex. But at least it was a smaller plaza that allowed us to kind of play outside. So, we kind of got used to it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But then you come in, obviously you don't speak the language. Your parents don't really speak the language. We kind of, get thrown into schools. And you kind of have to adapt and figure out a way to communicate and adjust to, a new life.
Yeah.
So, it was interesting.
Yeah. That is a big, that's a huge change, right? I mean, cause it's not like, okay, once you learn this language, then we'll get, they're like, nope, you're in. You're in it. Yeah. I get figured out. Right.
And they had a lot of good, programs. I went to, the school was called Griffith Elementary, which is on 44th Street and just north of McDowell.
Okay.
Actually, we were very blessed that we ended up in a school system where the teachers really kind of cared, and they made it a really big part of their life to make sure that we felt comfortable and not completely stood out. So we were able to make a couple friends relatively quickly, and we learned how to speak English. At that age, you kind of adapt kind of quickly, I think.
Sure.
So I was reading before I could speak it, and I guess through watching TV, we just you're kind of forced into it, and you understand it, and so that was an interesting, time period for sure.
It's interesting you say that. I have a friend, one of my wife's good friends, Gina. She's from Ukraine. She moved here when she was like 12 or 13, knew no English, and she learned it from watching like Saved by the Bell, and like she learned it from watching TV.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Like
yeah.
that's incredible.
Well, what happens is I think what happens is like even now I have a decent accent, but what happens is when you're kind of learning at that age group, if somebody kind of makes fun of you for saying the word differently, with an accent or whatever, or completely wrong, you kind of like close up, and and when you have that liberty at your own home and you're just watching TV, you kind of practice, and it's a lot different, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. A lot more enjoyable, I think, than someone making fun of you and yelling at you. Right? Yeah.
Well, because like anything else, the outsider, everything that comes with that is interesting. Yeah. We were able to adapt like relatively quickly, and I have two siblings, an older sister, we're like 3.5 years apart, and then a younger brother.
Okay.
And so we all went to school together. Learned to love Arizona, pretty quickly. Like I said, we had good teachers, we had good people around us. The people in the neighborhood were welcoming and nice. So
that helps.
It did.
Yeah. That's community.
Absolutely.
Right? That's absolutely what it's about, right?
Yeah.
And it was where did you have like a path like that you want? Like, did you want to, some kids are like, oh, I want to be a professional athlete, or I want to be a musician, right? Did you have something you wanted to be?
No, I think I had no fucking clue. Like,
me too, man.
Even now, I still don't. I don't think I have it figured out.
Yeah.
I think what happens is when you start hearing, and I think this happens to a lot of like migrant families, that as you transition and you realize because you see it, right? You realize the impact that moving away from your home has on especially adults. If it's hard on a kid where you're like, oh man, like the freedom, imagine like leaving your parents, leaving everything kind of behind to move to a different place. So I feel like you, whether you know it or not, kind of jump into this thing of like proving how do I want to say, like proving the point that we're worth, being around.
Sure.
That we add value to whatever it is that we're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's, superimposed on us, whether we understand it that way or not.
Yeah.
And so, community is kind of the key as you build it, around you. You want to be high functioning, that's
sure.
kind of the main base for it.
And maybe not in so much in a specific category or anything like that, you're saying. Correct. Right? Or just kind of
overall. What I mean by that is like the goal is just to be a good person that brings something to the table. So there wasn't any path that I could say, like, like anything else, you could, as you're a little kid, you're like, I want to be an astronaut, like I want to, things of that nature. But realistically, I just all I knew that I was like, I want to help my parents, thrive and my family, and that's that. Whatever path I need to take that leads me in that direction is kind of where I'm gonna go to.
I take that.
Yeah.
Well, that's a better foundation than like, I want to be a pro athlete. All right, well, what about your family and stuff? Fuck them.
And part of it is like the same reason that I think as you upbringing in general, like when you see hard work, when you see kind of all that aspect of it, you're like, all right, well, where does that element kind of get you, and where do I want to go? And I knew that, partially at the beginning of the stage, like my parents would be like, school is like the key to success,
Sure.
So I was like, I'm going to be good at school.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that, and I enjoyed school, and I enjoyed kind of that, and I did well. And then, as I progressed, I still wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
For a small, for the larger part of my, childhood, I always thought about being an attorney, specifically that focused in immigration law and that type of thing.
Yeah.
I later found out as I started kind of going through that I'm like, it wasn't exactly what I expected.
Sure.
Yeah. There's a lot of red tape and a lot of like just bullshit. in between that and
Yeah.
political aspects that have nothing to do with the reality. So I shifted and I said, you know what, I need to do something that's true to who I am, and you know, and allows me to just express myself in, you know, the only kind of ways that we know how.
Yeah.
So like I saw my dad, you know, my dad for the most part worked, you know, and my mom too, in, you know, the service industry, from, you know, any, you know, what kind of jobs do, you know, immigrant families that come in for the first time get, you know, so cleaning ladies. My dad was a dishwasher, and bus boy, and just whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And they always had such high energy and so happy just about opportunity that's kind of the point, you know.
Sure.
That you're like, all right, I just want to, you know, whatever it is that I kind of go to, I do want to be happy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think as I went through it, like it wasn't like, you find out really quickly that financials aren't necessarily that part of it.
Yeah.
You know, because
Yeah.
I remember one Christmas, we had a Christmas, right, where my dad, we finally was able to purchase our first trailer, right? We used to live in some apartments. We moved to some trailers on 44th Street, just south of McDowell. And, you know, that year, all his money was gone, right? So Christmas time comes around and, you know, they take us to the dollar store, right?
Yeah.
Give us each, you know, $5.
Yeah.
Go and buy each other gifts, you know, buy one for mom, buy one for your brother, da, 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 da. And I remember to this day, like, that being one of the most kind of beautiful parts of just giving and receiving as a whole.
Yeah.
And it you know, there's a lot of things that in my mind just kind of cement ideas about, like, okay, this makes me happier than if I would have gotten, you know, whatever,
Sure.
$200 PlayStation or whatever
Yeah.
at this point in time.
Yeah.
Because I knew the sacrifice and everything that came with it. So I was very, you know, I guess I was very self-aware about a lot of my upbringing from the get-go.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once again, what a great foundation, right? Like just, you know, it's kind of tough to say, but, you know, growing up, you know, struggling, you know, kind of, you know, I grew up in like a kind of a poor, like, you know, we grew up in like the Appalachians, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so like just a really kind of funky part of the world. But like the appreciation that you have for those foundational type of things, right? Family relationships and just like the essence of things, right?
Yeah.
You know, but that's incredible, man. That's
no.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always, you know, it's nice to be able to kind of just understand that, you know.
Yeah.
That's more the sequence of like events that lead you to where you're at now.
Yep.
Aren't just like things that you learned 3 days before, you know. It's
Sure.
things that kind of build character, hard work, you know. I used to cut grass, like when I was younger, you know, I always wanted to kind of like start businesses, right?
Yeah.
You know, in Chihuahua and in where we're from, there's really not like any big opportunities in that sense. So almost everybody kind of is an entrepreneur and kind of works for themselves one way or another, whether you're in agriculture, whether you're whatever it is that you do. So I started like a little, you know, cutting grass for all the neighbors, and that was my way of getting some money. And I remember my dad would go and check, like he had nothing to do with it, you know.
Yeah.
Not even then, like they would say, oh, just cut the grass, I'll give you $5. So, you know, I cut the grass, and my dad's like, well, you didn't trim the bushes. I'm like, well, they didn't pay me for that. And he's like, well, you got to do a good job.
Yeah.
So he would like go and like manage us and be like, you have to do it right. It doesn't matter. And I'm like, you know, and I think, you know, that's kind of when I talk about kind of the aspect of just running a restaurant is like, you just have, you know, it kind of ties together with it.
Yeah.
I just do a good job. Just, you know,
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, that's kind of like the format I learned is just work.
Yeah. Well, you take pride in it, right?
Yeah.
You take pride in it, and it's not just checking stuff off the box. It's kind of creating that whole experience, right?
Absolutely.
That was a good analogy used of, you know, cutting grass. Kind of like there's all these other things you can do. You can pull the weeds, you can trim the hedges, you can do all of this stuff. You can, you know, blow the grass off of the driveway when you're done, or whatever it is. Same with the restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, you could bring the food over to them and just hand it to them.
Yeah.
Or you can elevate that. There's so many other things around
Absolutely.
it that can make that a better experience. And the likelihood of somebody hiring you back to cut their grass, or the likelihood of somebody coming back into your restaurant, really kind of hinges on that, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did food come into play for you?
So, you know, I think, you know, like I said, I went to you know, school here. I went Griffith Elementary, and then I went to Camelback High School. Then I went to Phoenix College, and then finally ASU. And throughout this whole things, I would be, as soon as I could get a job, I was working just mostly food places, right? And I really enjoyed part of it, even the service part of it. That like was something that I didn't necessarily like hate. Which most people are like, I hate this. I'm like, it's not that bad. You get to talk to a lot of people. You interact. It's a decent thing. It's better than being and doing fucking contract labor.
For sure.
Or manual labor. Like in my opinion, as far as like. I don't have the back for it. So I think it was very easy to understand. So I was at ASU and I was working as a caseworker for child support enforcement out of all places.
Okay.
And I was a temp. And then when they finally offered me a position, like a whatever you call it, like an actual position,
like a permanent.
Yeah, permanent.
Yeah.
I had like a little crisis of like, I don't want to fucking do this.
Yeah.
I can't, I can't kind of live in this like kind of bureaucracy of what this is exactly.
Sure.
So I backed out and kind of just continued to work at different restaurants and just, trying to find my path. And I was lucky enough to meet my wife, Nadia, one night at an ASU party, actually. And, as we, it's that type of thing, where things are just too perfect, it's kind of crazy. So I see her, I'm like, damn, she's lovely. But nothing really happens that night. The next day, my brother calls me and says, hey, we're going to go eat breakfast. How about you come through and go with us? And I'm like, nah, dude, I think I'm going to eat here. My mom's making enchiladas. And he's like, well, that girl is going to come with us. I'm like, all right, pick me up. So then that same day we have a conversation and she's like, oh, I'm in culinary school. I'm from Chihuahua. Just a lot of things that lined up. And, literally that day we were talking. I was like, one day I'm going to open a restaurant. And she's like, well, me too. I'm like, oh, well, maybe we'll open it together.
Yeah.
And then, a couple years later, we do end up, getting married. I'm still working at that time at the Pizzeria Bianco. And Nadia started working at the House Brasserie, I believe is the first place.
Okay.
That's where she met Rene. He used to work there as well. And, that kind of relationship started from that part.
Both as cooks, chefs?
Both as cooks, yeah. Yeah, she was fresh out of culinary school.
Yeah.
And then she ended up leaving that job, going to a separate one. And just, ultimately wasn't happy with it for a lot of factors. And, I think it was around Christmas time, like sometime December or something like that. And we had a conversation about like, well, you know what? I think we're putting this off. Like, fuck it, let's open.
Yeah.
Like, I'll start finding a place like tonight and we'll just, figure it out. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, at least we tried.
Yeah.
And then that same night we, found the space. I just went on like Craigslist or something like that. I started looking.
Yeah.
Reached out that night and they didn't answer. It was kind of late. The next day they kind of answered and said, well, what kind of restaurant experience do you have? Like, well, we've been working for a long time. They're like, well, we don't know. I'm like, well, like, give us a shot. And that was the location that's on McDowell and the 17.
Okay.
Or no, the 51. Sorry.
51.
Yeah,
right
51, the 19th Street in McDowell. And yeah, man. So we got the opportunity. Nadia's parents loaned us some money as well. For to do. Because I had no idea how the fuck restaurants work.
Sure.
Like in the true sense, like I didn't know you had to do a deposit for gas, water. Here's 3,000 here, and I'm like, oh shit, we don't have any money for that. So It's like deposit for this, deposit for electricity. You have to pay this, and by the time we had everything, we're like, damn, we're down to like $50. And I called Nadia. I was like, hey, we need to open like tonight. So like, we're not ready. I'm like, no. Like, we need to open tonight.
Yeah.
Like, there's no end. We
need to start bringing in some money.
Yeah. We opened. I had another job at the time too, so I couldn't be there the whole time. And sure enough, we leave and it gets kind of busy. It's just Nadia. I think at that time was like, I think my mom and my dad were there to help, but not like we had never even, we literally had like we made this makeshift like plancha on top of a grill that we just like welded together in the back really quickly to give us a plancha so we can make our tortillas. We're like, we're gonna make all our tortillas from scratch. We're gonna make them, to order because is special. Everything that every protein we did was like exactly like the way that we kind of wanted to, and we were cooking everything to order.
Okay. And
so when when your sales are in a day is like $500, you can do that type of thing.
Yeah.
And then as you kind of progress, you realize, holy shit, you can't. This isn't like a good way of doing it.
Yeah.
But it was, it's a good experience. I think we found out really quickly that that's kind of where we were meant to be is kind of doing this restaurant. We never expected for it to go any further than that. All we ever wanted was like, I wonder if we're ever going to fill this place. You know?
Interesting. Yeah.
It was like 25 seats, and I remember like the nights just prepping and just kind of sitting there in awe of like this grandiose place that we got. Look at all the parking. Look at, it's 25 seats, but it's like, it's the most beautiful thing, even though, like in a lot of ways, obviously it wasn't. Their roof was falling apart. Like, but we saw it with such a, with such beauty that we're like, hey, this is amazing. We get an opportunity. And I mean, I think kind of that's kind of where we get our start. We had no idea about advertising. We didn't even make any social media things. So like we had no idea about a lot of things. Yeah. We opened the doors.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We're open.
Now what? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break here real quick.
A real quick reminder, head over to atasteofaz.com and subscribe to our email newsletter. Also, subscribe to A Taste of AZ magazine and get it shipped right to your door. Now let's get back into today's episode.
All right, I hated to cut you off right there, but I knew our camera was going to stop for a second. But I love that though, because for me, I'd never owned a business before. I didn't even have a desire to own a business, right? I'm like, I just want somebody else to do all the hard work, and I just do my job. You know, I'll do my job well. So I always thought that like the hardest part, like really everything about running a business, is getting people to come and be a customer, right? And then I realized quickly, especially within this industry of talking to so many people, that happens pretty quickly. Then you start to realize, oh shit, like we need to like, it's not a matter of are we going to get people? It's going to be, can we handle the people that are coming in? Yeah. Is that kind of what it was?
I mean, honestly, the first month was, in retrospect, pretty fucking shitty. Like it wasn't like just busy. Obviously, we put up we didn't even like, we handmade everything and put the sign up ourselves. Like obviously we were, like I said, we were in a budget. But what happened is it allowed us to kind of grow in a very good way. After that, it started getting kind of crazy. So the first month, we started meeting a couple people. I would still, I would man I was basically saute the little griddle and cashier. Okay. And Nadia was the everything else. Yeah. Everything else. And my mom and dad would come and help, obviously, like, and Nadia's sister every once in a while, and my brother, and everybody tried to kind of help, but obviously everybody has their lives, and for a consistent, we are also kind of like, because we got this opportunity, I think we were so focused on just, doing a good job and working that, Nadia and I were working 16 hours, 7 days a week. Sure. And I mean that like, and I don't mean like I'm at work, not like fucking working. Like we were cutting like proteins. I mean, we're like the whole time. It was just, and it was the most like, I know at that time it felt a certain way, obviously, because you feel like when you're in a hole that you can't escape. I think all chefs and restaurant people kind of have dreamt about the little ticket machine going,
wake up in the middle
and oh shit, I'm behind again. But I think that's part of like what really kind of made us flourish at the beginning, is just that we started getting a lot of people from the industry. Okay. Like that's kind of when it started. It's like, oh, I'm a chef from here. I'm older. And they started kind of really chatting about and what we were doing. And it was just, we were, like I said, very fortunate that everything kind of lined up. It was the exact moment in which it needed to, in the right place. Sure. Everything just kind of lined up the way that, we wouldn't have expected it. Yeah. Because the reality is, like, I always call it like blissful ignorance, right? Now knowing or seeing everything that we've done in the last 8 years, that place should have never fucking worked.
Right.
It just shouldn't have. The reality is there's no walkability. There's no, we had no presence. We as far as we weren't able to throw any money at advertisement ever. We still haven't done it now, but not for a different reason. But I think it was just one of those things where we're just like a little kid with bright eyes, and you're like, it's gonna work.
Yeah,
it's gonna work. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah,
and I think and it was really. But once again, we've been on that fortunate side. I think that as we were kind of communicating with people, and I think that's one of the blessings that we had in the Mexican food world as far as tacos too, is that we also did have a format in which we were able to express ourselves in a very kind of prominent way. Meaning this is special for this reason.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times there's other people who obviously we're not the first ones to do, tacos and anything like that. But I think we were also able to kind of communicate in a very expressive way. Like, hey, listen, this is beautiful because of this. We're specifically from our region. And we want you guys to celebrate that part of it or understand it. Yeah. And if you don't like it, then don't fucking come back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And part of it is just because I think as we kind of started, the feedback originally was like, you guys don't have chips and salsa? Like, no. This, and they're like, well, why not? I'm like, because we don't. I mean, I don't it didn't even range in my mind. Like, why would we have to?
Sure. Yeah.
In all reality, we didn't have a fucking fryer, so we couldn't do it regardless.
Yeah.
And I wasn't just going to buy, but the reality is also we didn't want to. I think part of everything that we do or did there felt very special to us. It's our, families, home cooking essentially.
Yeah.
And we're making part of every aspect of what we did. It was if you ever sit back, if you were ever fortunate enough to have your mom or your grandma hand make you some flour tortillas or corn tortillas, and how special you feel about receiving this, this aspect, it's this nourishment, from them, that we're like, what if we can express that in a tiny way to other people?
Yeah.
Meaning every taco you have, tortillas made specifically for you.
Yeah.
There's something special about that whole thing. Obviously, I romanticize food a lot more than your average person. But, in our opinion, that's exactly what that was. We're like, hey, listen, this is a part of us. It's a story, but it's also a foundational thing of who we are.
Yeah.
And you're consuming something that's very special to us. The same way that, a lot of the celebratory things that happen with barbacoas and stuff like that, in events like weddings, stuff like that. The food part of it is actually a major component of what you are and what you do. So
I love that, right? Because to me, a true artist creates what they want to create. They create what they're inspired to create. They're not creating stuff for, I think this person will I think we should do this.
Yeah.
No, they create what they create. And then if people like it, they like it. If they don't,
Absolutely.
they don't, and that's authenticity.
Well, we have this whole thing with fucking authenticity, right? Because I think what happens is, I remember some lady coming in the first 3 weeks and yelling at Nadia, you don't know what a taco is, because we didn't have crunchy tacos. And we're like, listen, all good. There is a place for that.
Yeah.
And a place that does that, and they do it beautifully, and we don't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, at some point in time, we also have to kind of recognize that there was a large period of time in which the customer's always right came into play, and it's fucking stupid. Because how can you know as a consumer?
Sure.
How can you explore something completely different if you want the same shit everywhere?
Right.
That's what staggered progress in general, I think, in the food world, is that if I go everywhere and they have the exact same shit, then what's the innovation? How do you, as a cook, how do you innovate? How do you not, wither inside and die of being, not being able to kind of produce something no, this is the way it is.
Sure.
And I hope you like it. And I want you to.
Yeah.
And I want you to tell everyone. But if you don't, then I'm also comfortable with that.
For sure.
There's always there's a saying no soy monedita de oro. I'm like, I'm not a gold coin. Not everyone's gonna love me.
Yeah.
But that's part of it. That's the cool thing about community. That's the cool thing about the projection of serving things that have regionality aspects to them, because you get to pick and choose. I love this region.
Mm-hmm.
This is my favorite. That's where I'm gonna go and eat. And that's and this one, and not so much. for many reasons, it's very different.
Yeah.
We also took a lot of time to kind of just explore why the food element and culturally and for a lot of reasons why is what it is. Like in Chihuahua, landlocked state, refrigeration, something that's relatively new, as far as like having the ability to have it at all times.
Yeah.
So like the way that things kind of brought, our food was like, it's easier to keep a cow and goat or lamb alive and feed it and then butcher it when you're going to eat it than to try to refrigerate it, right?
Sure.
Especially back in the day.
Yeah.
And then you find creative ways of making different things. So like the chile colorado, which, me and Nadia like would go to Mexico, load up 500 pounds of it and bring it back because we wanted it to be specific, is one of those components that like such a beautiful thing for the region, because what happens, it's a chilaca, which is a variation of kind of close to like a hatch chili.
Okay.
They're very similar. And that chile grows in a place called El Valle, close to where we're from. And basically you get this chile that you use in 4 different formats for the most part. So you have when it's green and you can roast it, you can cook it the way it is, you can make, all kinds of things with it at that point in time.
Yeah.
Then as it's starting to kind of mature, you cut it, you roast it, and then you dehydrate it, and now it's chile pasado. Now you're able to save that just kind of anywhere. It's almost like a shelf-stable type thing, dehydrated. And then you let it mature, it turns red. When it turns red, you're able to do the same thing. You can also kind of get the back part of making chile pasado, but also you can let it dry, and now you have the chile colorado. That goes into most of the cuisine in Chihuahua for the most part.
Okay.
At least where we're from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See, I like that, right? Because there is always that thing of like, okay, what makes this region different? What is, because that was what the question I was going to ask you, but you nailed it before I even asked it. But that's great. Like, and you think about those things that what I love about food is like the history of it, right?
Absolutely.
Not just the history, like the last 100 years, like thousands of years,
Absolutely.
like, right? Like before refrigeration, like, because these people ate and they ate well, right? Like as far as like, they're not getting scallops and shit floating, right? But but food is such a part of of just culture, human culture, that it's obviously there are some parts of the world where it's survival only, but I just think it's incredible how people can make something so great out of minimal type
Absolutely.
of, like you're given limited resources, but you go above and beyond to make it like special.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think that's how most of like the food market of like, of everyday foods kind of creates, right? Because realistically, like financially speaking, you're not going to eat steak every fucking day.
Right.
Right. Even, there's some people that do now, but like in those worlds, you're like, you need to find a way to make things that were maybe terrible looking or terrible tasting, make them taste good.
Yeah.
It's easy to make Wagyu taste good.
Sure. Yeah.
Add salt.
Exactly.
You're good,
Yeah. Yeah.
Make brains, make tripa, make, all the other elements of that work.
Yeah.
And that's when you get some of the most beautiful cuisines. And,
For sure.
And then, I think in a very important part of like what we're trying to do in like, as like the fourth element of what is kind of educate the public a tiny bit in just like the regionality part of it.
Sure.
Because I think what happens is that we used to get clumped into like Mexican food or tacos, and that's it. Like, the best tacos. Like we're not, in the market to compete against our peers. Like we actually want as many good elements of food as possible, and as diverse as possible as well. Because when you go to Mexico City, it's a different world. When you go to Tijuana, it's a different world. When you go, every state has their own kind of uniqueness to what they do, and they do it very well. And I think it's difficult because I think when people start talking about authenticity, they're like, well, this isn't like my grandma. Yeah, you're from a different region.
Yeah.
Shit, I mean, they're in towns. I mean, you can be in a town that's like 30 minutes away from mine, and your fideo might be different.
Sure.
Because your grandma had access to fucking, I don't know, onion.
Yeah.
And so a big portion of it is that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the cool thing about, like, in my opinion, as I go and consume in different restaurants, I love that. I love learning new things. Some that work for me, some that don't. But at least I get to explore. It's completely, like, it changes, like, the narrative of, like, of food in general for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's... I tell people all the time, it's kind of like Italian food for in Mexico, where if you go to the north, you go to the south, so in certain parts of Italy there was eggs, and in other ones there wasn't. So you got creative, and you made pasta that didn't need it, and so that's it. Part of like luxury in general, like in Chihuahua, that's what it was.
Yeah,
With landlocked state, we have a lot of cows, we have a lot of ability to kind of leave them around the same way that you see it in Sonora.
Yeah.
So proteins are like a heavy aspect of what we do. So that's why a lot of the stuff, a lot of other things don't really grow very well, and spices get really expensive like throughout the history of things, right? So spices in general is like, you're not going to have the same element that you do now. Like, you got to think that transporting these things were not easy 100 years ago.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't everything that was growing in the southern part of Mexico just didn't make sense to bring up north for a lot of reasons, financially and for it to spoil.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that you get from the south are completely different. The same thing with like, you see like a white Sonoran wheat that grew in the Sonoran desert for, I don't know, thousands of years.
Yeah.
And you get something like the flour tortilla, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of times people are like, oh, like, that's not Mexican. Like, why the fuck not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, why is it not?
Yeah.
Like, historically, if you like, that's the thing about regionality. That's what the northern part of the Mexico part had. And it's just as important as the corn element was to the south.
Yeah.
Because that's how we end up with burritos and all the other stuff that, seem different, but ultimately beautiful in the same way.
Sure.
So I think that's kind of like the main things. Like, I don't like being pivoted against, like, oh, the people like, no, it's all great.
Yeah.
I got to travel all over. Yeah. Most of Mexico now. And I find it very interesting. And,
Sure.
and and it's beautiful. It's different than like what we are used to, like we have, like, if you go to the southern part, you don't see a lot of like steakhouses. It's not really a thing. You
Sure.
see more like cecina. You see like they get smarter about how they use protein financially.
It's not as abundant.
It wasn't as abundant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You have more limited space, but you also have champas. You have this ability, like in Mexico City, to grow, and based on like the intellect of these people that were able to create these floating rafts that make food, and you can grow food on, and water is more abundant, and that type of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's that's kind of the cool thing. It's celebrating each part of it. And, I'm just as proud of the Chihuahua part as anywhere else.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe a little bit more so because that's where I'm from. The
Sure.
same way that someone who's from Puebla is like, Puebla's like the fucking shit.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Because there's a historical part of like childhood that comes with that. Right. For me, smelling like a fresh made flour tortilla with some butter and salt and fucking consuming that is one of those things that's just happiness, right?
Yeah.
Burrito, like one of my favorite things in the world, where my grandma used to pack us little like burritos of frijoles with queso and just wrap them and keep them in her fucking purse for like, I don't even know how long. You hungry? I'm like, Grandma, I'm hungry. Popped out the purse. Burrito.
Dude, that's great.
You're
My grandma
good.
had candy at the bottom of her purse. You had burritos.
We had burritos, man.
Dude, that's
and they were
badass.
amazing too. And that, so I think that's a big element, of kind of the cultural part of that. But at the end of the day, we just want to make, like I said, good food the best way that we could. We had a very limited space at that taqueria. It was fucking hot in there, like next to the grill. It was fucking hot.
Yeah.
So, it was never really meant, it's an old Dairy Queen turned barbecue place that, we were able to take the oven in the back and kind of transform it into kind of like a makeshift, smoker for like our proteins. And it ended up working out really well.
Yeah.
And, like, we love using it. So, yeah.
So, all right. So you had the goal of like, all right, we just opened this place, hoping we can fill the seats. Seats are full. That when do you guys start to think, all right, we need to, we're looking at location number 2 or looking to kind of expand?
Well, what happened is I think we were, it was at the time where like I said, we were working 16 hours every day. And then we realized there was one night in which I remember it so vividly because I think I was making some like the horchata or something in the front. And Nadia, like, this was like probably 2 a.m. on a Sunday night. And Nadia's in the back cutting meat, crying, right? Just like tearing, just, keep working. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? She's like, I'm so fucking tired.
Yeah.
I'm just so tired. Like, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's close tomorrow and let's start hiring people. Like, we just need to. Like, at this point in time, like, we're getting enough where, we can warrant that. And sure enough, we closed the next day. Hired, the two guys they're still with us now. Came in that day, like, just as customers.
Yeah.
Like, do you guys want a job? They're like, yeah. All right, cool. Come on back. And that was like the initial part of just what gave us a little bit of breathing room to be like, okay, we don't have to do this fully alone.
Yeah.
Right. And and as we kind of progress, we're like, oh man, actually we're getting better by having these other like outside help. And then, I think this was probably 9 months in, we get a call from the Food Network that they want to feature us on some smoked, or what was it? It was like a barbecue place, like smoked something. They wanted to feature the barbacoa, right?
Yeah.
I think they had written an article about how we did it and the process that it was and everything, right? And that same day, we are on like a Zoom call with the producers of that show, and then we get another phone call, and it's the team of like Guy Fieri's Diners, Drivers, and Dives, and they're like, "We want you to be on our show," and we're like, "Well, what?" We're literally on the Zoom call right now with a team from the Food Network about this other show, and so they're like, "All right, give me a second," and then like 2 minutes later, they're like, "Guy said, fuck that, you're doing this show." And so
he's calling the shots.
The producer, he's like, "Don't worry about it, we'll take care of everything," because they were going to shoot the same day and whatever. They come out, we're probably about a year in, like barely in our business.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, we usually, go to places that are a little bit older, but we've had like, I think they mentioned 4 different like chefs or people that they talk to. They're like, you have to do this space."
Yeah.
And that was kind of the place where we're like, man, like we might be onto something.
Yeah.
I think we sticking to, because our salsas are spicy. Like our red is fucking spicy. Like the green is spicy. Like it a lot of things that kind of were components that kind of drove the ethos of what we were doing, and then understanding how shocking it is to hear anything other than good, that's the other element
for sure.
As we went in, we were lucky enough to get on the show, and then it was really off to the races. Like I said, we never really had a lot of, like I said, we never did any advertisement. So that was the first big piece of just like big amount of advertisement that came our way.
That's like the mecca of advertising too. I mean,
absolutely. Everything about it was amazing.
Yeah.
And I gotta say this, a shout out to Guy, because I think most people don't understand how many small businesses his show has actually helped.
Sure.
Because people assume like they pay, like, no, we didn't pay shit for it. We didn't even know. Like we had no idea what the consequences of doing the show were anyway. They just said, hey, you got to close for 2 days. Like, fuck, like that's revenue loss for those 2 days, but whatever, hopefully it works out. And it was a very good thing for us. It put us on a, we were doing really well with the small the industry was really behind us, but that kind of put us on a platform that allowed other people to come by that were outside of just like foodies. And that really kind of put us in a position where we're like, oh man, like now we're like really busy, and you start kind of thinking about what's next. Sure. And so what we did was we ended up opening a little coffee shop called Café Chiwas, right? And in my mind, I was like, all right, this when we wake up, like in Chihuahua, my grandpa would have a coffee and he would eat like and toast a tamal, like, and that was his kind of like early breakfast. It's like tamales are already. So we tried to do this concept in which we're like, tamales and coffee, right? But people just didn't fucking get it. and I mean that like, because they were coming in, I'm like, I'll take 3 dozen. I'm like, no. That's not what we meant. We meant like you sit down, you drink a coffee, and you eat 1 or 2 tamales. That's the whole concept. I'm like, if you buy by the second customer, we're going to be out of tamales, And so that was an interesting kind of, platform to understand. Like, no, it's like, they're like, well, why don't you just make more? I'm like, that's not the point. You know, like, you know, me and my wife have very limited time, so we can only make this amount.
Yeah.
And it just, so ultimately we ended up not kind of working out. And at that time, I was talking to Chris Bianco, because I used to work for him prior at the pizzeria. And, you know, I'm like, who would know like what, you know, what I should do.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, it's like every adventure is your own, you know, like I can't tell you what to do. I'm like, well, they have this opportunity to do this place on Van Buren in 15th Street. That was the previous like Roland's Market, and, you know, and he's like, oh shit. It's like, I actually was gonna purchase that building. It's like, that's one of the places that I wanted to do, whatever. I'm like, but it's too big for us. They want another like concept to go in with. And then we ended up kind of having a conversation, and he's like, well, fuck it, let's open it together.
Yeah.
And so, like, crazily enough, like, our, you know, second restaurant was actually with one of the biggest players in as far as food world in Arizona.
I didn't know
Chris.
that.
Yeah.
What was that?
It was called Roland's Market Cafe. It's we were very ambitious at that space. You know, we started, you know, you were doing, I think, like 7 a.m. to like 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Beautiful built out space. It's now it's the House of Trato.
Okay. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, on Van Buren. Yeah. And, you know, we were very fortunate. I mean, like you know, Chris could have, you know, he was going from, you know, partnering with like Jamie Oliver and, you know, like fucking huge players, and here we are, 2 fucking kids who still don't really understand the platform where we're at.
Yeah.
And given this opportunity. So yeah, of course we wanted, like, all right, well, let's do it. And, you know, we were able to open that store. It was a lot of work, like a lot.
Sure.
You know, Nadia also at that time got pregnant, and by the time we opened the store, because it took, you know, a little bit longer than we expected, our baby was born. So it was a difficult time in that transition, because we have still the taqueria that's at this point in time really busy, and trying to keep up with those 2 things, having a baby, also having this other restaurant that's like a behemoth of a place compared to, you know, like the taqueria was probably 1,200 square feet. The other place was like 6,000.
Yeah.
And it was a, you know, beautiful experience, but it was just a very difficult for us specifically. And we did everything we could. You know, we tried a lot of things. Nadia even got a James Beard nomination as for right. Southwest for, I think this was 2019 for it. But ultimately it just it was the wrong time. The same way that happened, like it was the opposite of like Tacos Chiwas, where like everything kind of fell in place. Like in this one, it was like things weren't falling into place fast enough for it to kind of warrant. So unfortunately, it didn't make it through the year. But you know, and at the same time, like not even within a short period of time, we had opened another little spot called The Normal in Tempe with Chris.
Gotcha.
And you know, that same thing, it was at a hotel. Hotels are a little bit difficult because you know, you're also servicing part of their customer base. And I think, you know, I was the wrong person for that, because like I said before, like I like shit the way that we make it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like dumbing down a salsa just because like someone from the Midwest can't handle it. That's why it's extra. It's on the side. You know, you don't have to put it on there.
Yeah.
But I get it. You know, like I understand the whole narrative behind it. So ultimately, we were fortunate enough that somebody else bought out the concept, like the overall hotel program, and ended up kind of switching and essentially kind of bought us out of that. And it happened like, I mean, you know, COVID happened like a couple 6 months or 8 months after that. So, you know, it was meant to kind of all happen. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the initial part. After we ended up closing those two, Nadia and I went on, you know, we left to Mexico for 2 weeks to kind of recharge and re-energize. Yeah. And I found this little place when I came back. I was like, I need to do something. And that's where we found our second Tacos Chiwas that was in Chandler on Alma School in Warner.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And, you know, my dad, my brother, everybody got hands on. We, you know, fixed it up to the best of our ability. It was a tiny little spot, we're like, well, let's start with something really small to see kind of how it goes. And you open it up, and first day we get fucking wrecked. Like, oh, bad. Like, I felt bad for, if anybody's hearing this that went that day, I feel sorry. That wasn't intentional. I mean, it was fucking insanely busy.
Yeah.
Like, we never expected it. So obviously we were behind. Like, I mean, it didn't matter if you had ordered 1 taco or 20.
Yeah.
It was a hour before you got your food. So, we realized, okay, we're onto something. I think that we're doing the right thing. We're going the right path. And we were about a year into that place when I said, you know what, COVID kind of started happening, like at the forefront. They closed us down for a lot of different, obviously, like, as we're all aware.
Yeah.
So the McDowell location, we pivoted to just to go.
Okay.
Opened up a little drive-through window. We didn't even have a system for it.
Yeah.
You just drive up to the window and order at that window, right?
Yeah.
And then people were like sitting out in the parking lot with like their to-go orders, like I don't know, like a fucking, what do you call those drive up, like,
like
sitting in your car,
the sock hop type places.
Yeah, like a Sonic type, like, that's what was happening. So in the community, you kind of rallied behind like that specific place in general. Like, hey, we're not, we kept hearing, we're not gonna let you guys fail. We're not gonna let you guys fail.
Yeah.
And that's when I, got the notion. I'm like, man, community is kind of the key to all of this.
Sure.
Right. And I think that if we build anything that we build, we need to build it within the community so that, that we can kind of go through anything in life. If we can get through this stage that was such a difficult for a lot of reasons, then, we'll stay around for a while.
Yeah.
So anyway,
let's take a quick break here.
A real quick reminder, head over to atasteofaz.com and subscribe to our email newsletter. Also, subscribe to A Taste of AZ magazine and get it shipped right to your door. Now let's get back into today's episode.
Something else. I don't know what yet, but we'll figure it out.
Okay.
You're a good guest, man. Hey, will you double check to make sure I hit record? Pretty sure I did. Good? Awesome. All right, man. So, like, what a journey.
Right.
Dude, what a journey. I mean, and we even had like characters from another universe come in, Chris Bianco coming into the play. That's pretty cool. I never knew that there was that connection with you and Bianco.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. He, once again, I think, talk about a good mentor to have, as far as whether he understood it as that or not, it was really nice to see the ethos of just kind of, he says shit like, you put shit in, shit comes out, so like whatever it is that you put forward in food is what you're gonna get out. So you can't expect to put terrible ingredients in things and then expect it to be a better better food. So we kind of stuck to that small menu almost everywhere that we done. Try to really kind of focus on each individual item as much as we can. We make all of our corn tortillas. We make all of our flour tortillas. Actually, my brother makes them right now. 100% organic flour we get from Utah. It's a lot of labor, like there's significantly easier ways of doing, we always joke about how we do shit the hard way. But that's partially because we want it to be done in a very particular way. Yeah. Right. When people talk about it, what makes your food special? I'm like, listen, like for me, it's special because it has a very natural connection to my childhood and everything around it. I'm like, but overall, like we make everything. I mean, like literally every aspect of what we do is like from scratch. Because that's the only way to kind of control, like I said, I think being consistent is kind of a huge key to success
for sure
in anything, right? I don't even mind you being consistently bad as long as you're fucking consistent, right? Because you go to a place and it's like, oh, that was good. The next day, fucking terrible. Like I'm like, that was terrible, but at least I know what I'm gonna get. Know
what to expect. Yeah.
The consistency is kind of like the biggest key to the restaurant world, in my opinion. So like, we were obsessed with that, and like I said, we made everything continue to do so the same way, and it's it's been an interesting kind of formula to. That's why we haven't really expanded too much on the taquerias, because the amount of labor and our end is
sure.
is very difficult.
Yeah.
And we don't have like a commissary that everything comes out of, because we do find that depending on the area, like the amounts and everything like that, we just have to pivot to.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why partially why we haven't really done a bunch of them, because we really want them to be like a strong format.
Yeah.
In each one of them, and hopefully special. In each each one of our places in general should feel special.
Sure.
So yeah, so that was the initial part of that. We ended up after Chandler, we ended up kind of looking into downtown Mesa,
okay.
right? Guy named Josh from Cider Core, that they have a place
Josh
down there.
Stern. Yeah, Josh is awesome.
Reached out and I met him one day while I was just in line at the Worth Takeaway, grabbing some like breakfast sandwiches for the guys at the Chandler location. And he's like, "Hey, would you ever be, interested in doing something in downtown Mesa?" I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I like the way that this, like everything that about, that downtown feels really unique to me. So I would love to be involved. During the initial part of COVID, I get a phone call and say, "Hey, listen, like there's an opportunity here." It's like, I know that most people are like shutting shit down, and scared. It's like, but it's like, I was like, well, listen, I'm like, I would love to talk to those guys and see if that we can come to some agreement. I end up talking to the owners of the building and kind of come up with a solution that was like, listen, like, I don't know what's going to happen during this whole debacle of just COVID. There was so much confusing information out there, and just that was like that. I'm willing to take a chance if you guys are. I'm like, but I would love to own the building. So, within a year, like I wanted to be part of our contract that within a year, if we do well enough, we can buy the building from you.
Yeah.
They agreed. A year later, we ended up buying the building.
Nice.
That kind of cemented us in that part in a lot of, in a very good way. And, it was, when you talk about community, like the people were so happy in that community specifically to have something open during a time where everybody was kind of like panicking about like, like what are we going to do? And it ended up being like just busy from the get-go. And it hasn't stopped since. Right. We added a whole, at the original location, we only had beer. At the Chandler location, we didn't even have like a fucking public restroom, so we couldn't have anything. We literally just had waters and sodas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And at that one, it had a full bar. So we're like, all right, we're gonna go for the first time, do a full bar.
Yeah.
I called one of my friends, Jeremiah, that used to be my GM over at the Normal when we did that for a while. And I said, listen, I have an opportunity. We might fail. I'm like, I just need you to know, like,
that's your opening line.
Like, you're like I'm just telling you right now. I'm like, I would love to bring you on to help me, build a bar program, because I've never done it myself. And but I want, I think this could be a good opportunity, but it's a huge risk. At the same time, Nadia's sister had moved to where was the border? It was a border town. I can never think of the name. Anyway, so she had moved out there, and may have been looking for an opportunity to come back to Arizona. I said, hey, well, it'd be great to have her come back and be the GM and kind of just run the show, so that we have the ability to kind of stay very much in control of everything.
Sure.
And she agreed. So between her, Jeremiah, which Pamela, shout out to Pamela, we opened this place up, and then we have my mom, who's still in Phoenix, my dad and my brother, who were basically in Chandler, and then we had Pam, Jeremiah, and then Nestor. All these elements in our world that, like, it's crazy to see, because when you talk about community, the community that you build within your restaurant is also highly important.
For
right?
sure. Yep.
Because this isn't some fucking magic thing that, like, me and I flip a switch, and then it has to do with everybody that works, that core group that works inside of your network.
For
right?
sure.
We were able to get or we were lucky enough to receive these people who care and understand that we care about them as well.
Yeah.
And so they've stuck with us the whole time. I mean, they basically, most of our core is still with us from the get-go. Ups and downs.
For
right?
sure.
Like it's just, that's the reality of family. We have fights, we have that, there's elements that are fully out of our control, but at the end of the day, we do care and they care too.
Yeah.
So it makes it really easy to have that type of platform where you're able to kind of pivot and change and open new things, because like we have a very good core group that kind of helps us kind of maneuver.
Yeah.
Right. Those were some tough, it's a lot of work.
For
you
sure.
know what I mean? Like I know sometimes from the outside perspective, it feels like, man, they're moving. Like you guys have no idea. Like this amount of fucking work and, days of no sleep and missed, parties and missed family opportunities. My baby, I was very fortunate to be able to bring my babies with me to work for the most part. But, there's a lot of elements. Like the restaurant is a very jealous, what do you say? I don't in Mexico, mistress, I guess, or like it's
takes a lot of your time.
It wants your attention.
Yep.
You needs it. Like that's part of it. Like you have to kind of be there. You need to have some type of element of like I said, to be consistent, to try to do things well. So yeah, it's we're very blessed in that part of it too, that it isn't just, obviously it's not just us.
For sure.
It's a lot more of them. They're better at now making the food and everything than we are. Like when I jump in the and they're like, oh, we need some help, and I jump in the line, I'm like, I'm kind of in the way, aren't I?
You're like, should I go? Like, go.
Go ahead.
That's great though, man. That's great leadership on your you and Nadia's part is because it's a simple yet very hard thing to do, right? It's like just build the team, right? Because the team will make or break you. And my grandmother owned our town restaurant growing up, and she would always, I remember her telling me so many times, she's like, it's all about your people. She's like, you're like, if you have the right people in place, you're going to do great. If you don't, it's going to be a struggle, and it all starts with you guys, right? Creating that culture and creating that, like you said, you care for them, they care for you, and they'll go to war for you, right? They'll go to war for you. And because the people can make and break you, or make or break you,
I remember when COVID started and they were shutting everything down, I got everybody together. I'm like, listen guys, we have two options. Either we shut down, right? And we just wait to see what happens, or we fucking don't. And I'm here with you guys. And I'm like, and understand, like, we will continue to pay you as far as we're like, until we get to the point where we have no more money left. Then we'll just figure it out. We'll shut it down. Right. And we went from this, I don't remember exactly when it happened, but like we went from the highest sales we had ever done to the next day selling $50.
Dang.
And so we're all sitting there like, fuck, we're used to now volume, and like we're just sitting there just semi scared, but also like no idea where this is heading. The next day, same, fucking dead. So we're sitting there, we're like, listen, like, I know we all have like, things that we need to do. I'm like, so, it's up to you guys. Like, obviously we can't do this by ourselves. So we all kind of had that conversation. We rallied and just like, fuck it, let's go to work. And we were very fortunate that it kind of started, we pivoted really quickly, started kind of, like I said, we opened the window. We're like, let's figure out a way to make this kind of continue to work. And we ended up like doing actually really well during that part of it. Nice. And unfortunately for us and for, a lot of our guys, they also didn't get that break that a lot of people did during that part of it, for many reasons. But you know what? Like it's helped kind of develop us and put us in a position of where we're at now. Is that we just kind of continue. We drive through everything that we need to. Through what we know, which is fucking hard work.
For sure. Someone's doing the hard work, right? If you got a lot of money you can throw into the restaurant,
absolutely,
someone else is doing that work, right? You might not have to because you have the money, but that work is happening at some level. So before we wrap this up, we got to hear about this place. I think we introduced that we're here, but I just love I'm glad. I really love the path that this whole conversation took, right? Because I mean, of the impact of what you guys have had on this, this Phoenix metro and Arizona food community has been incredible. So the stories that you've shared, I love it. But we haven't talked much about this place, right?
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, this is a beautiful spot. I mean, nice, huge, big patio. Rachel and I were just talking. She went to ASU. She's like, this place has changed. Just Tempe in general, right?
Yeah.
Like, all this
Different
construction going on across from you, which that's gold for you guys, right? I mean, that's apartments.
Yeah.
So you've got that all around you. So tell me about this place.
So we're at a place called Cul-de-sac is the development itself. It was brought up as the world's first, or the United States, or I don't know if it's the world, but carless community, like the first carless community. But in retrospect, like the way that I've always seen it is like, they are building a community, right? That kind of flourishes when you make that the central focus. So when we got the opportunity to kind of talk about like what this place is going to be and how it was going to be formatted, we wanted it to be kind of a hub of that element too. We realized really quickly that obviously, like, if you do a higher end concept in a community, it's also difficult for your customer base to, like, you're not going to make it your every night, right?
Sure.
But as we, obviously we're still waiting for a lot of the development to kind of finish up, because we want to open for lunch. We want to do other things in this building. Beautiful building, wood fire oven, wood fire grill.
You built a building, right? Like this was from the ground up?
Like literally ground up. If anybody, knows where, Apache, just east of McClintock, what it used to be like and what it is now, is a different world, right? And I think, we have nothing but like good, we just wanted nothing but to be a good part of this community as a whole. So this restaurant is called Cocina. The format for it is we changed like a lot of our other restaurants. Now we changed the menu quite a bit. Everything is, as unique as we could potentially make it, but it also has to do with, kind of dinner things that we grew up with. Sure. And in innovative formats for Mexican cuisine as we see fit. Because I think what happens is there's been a transformation, in my opinion, about what I used to think about Mexican food and where it is now, which has to do with the fact that you're not able to replicate something because you're not in that place, right? You can't really, like, if you can't do the exact same thing because the water's different, the air's different.
Sure.
Like every aspect of it is going to be different. Therefore, as we've continued to kind of grow, like, hey, listen, this is an American concept from Phoenix. And that's where it kind of all stems out. If you see kind of my emblem, this is the little emblem for Cocina, which is a picture of a map of Chihuahua with a cactus coming out of it. And the whole base is like, hey, I'm so proud and so like of my heritage of being from Mexico and specifically from Chihuahua and everything that I learned there. But I'm also equally as privileged and as and happy being here in Arizona. It's the home that allowed me to flourish. It's where my kids were born now. It's the place that's really kind of allowed us to call it its home. You know how that initial part, in closing the loop, is like the initial part of the conversation was how out of place we felt when we first came into the U.S. right as a kid, and how lucky I feel to be here now. And I always appreciate that part of it because Arizona's a beautiful state. Regardless of what anybody else says, it's not just about the dry heat. There's a lot of love here
for sure.
And the only way that we kind of, our path is also to kind of showcase the Arizonan cuisine in a different format. And which includes Mexican food. So I think that's the main thing. We're lucky now to have 8 restaurants. So we have we ended up closing the Chandler location in June. Small location, so we're looking for a new home for that if anybody out there has any information. But
North Phoenix, up where I'm at, I could use one of the places up there.
But beyond that, we have Tacos Chiwas, we have Espiritu, which is in downtown Mesa.
Fantastic
we have
place,
Cocina Chiwas, which is here. We have we're investors in Bacanora, like the initial thing with Rene over there.
Yep.
We have Santo, which is in Arcadia. Pecado, which is right behind it, which is a little cocktail bar.
Okay.
And we have the Aruma Cafe, which is just open. It's a coffee shop.
Yeah.
That we ended up partnering up with DeAndre Hopkins, who used to play for the Cardinals.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So he he loves Arizona too, and wanted to kind of have some type of component here.
It's a big deal, man.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It's a good person.
Yeah.
Ultimately, like that, like the whole story and everything like that. That's good people.
Yeah.
And that's who you want to associate yourself with.
For sure.
So we're very lucky that we have a lot of like our connections within our realm, including our business partner, which is, Rene at Bacanora and Roberto at Santo and Espiritu. They're all good people who are also from the northern part of Mexico, who were all just kind of have this fucking big dream, right? And no idea how to kind of accomplish that, but with a lot of energy and a lot of love to give towards that.
Sure.
And same thing with Nadia, right? I a lot of times when I refer to the I, or like I always think of her and me as just one unit. You know what I mean? Because she, I want to give her flowers because she, without her, like I think about the most like important parts of my life, like which are my kids and in a lot of ways, all of our restaurants are like our kids.
For sure.
She's given to this in a very selfless way, right? She is shy. She doesn't like attention. You won't like. That's why a lot of people don't know a lot of shit about us in general, right? We kind of shy a tiny bit away from it.
Yeah.
We for many reasons. Nadia especially. She's a very just wonderful person that likes to just create and not necessarily attention seeking, or doesn't really care about that element the same way that I don't. I think like we've always wanted to kind of give everybody their flowers and what makes special. We have a great team now. I wish I could mention everybody just because they all know who they are and how special they are to what we do. So it's not there is no element in which we feel like we have some type of secret. As a lot of, and I bring that up because I think we get that quite a bit. We're like, well, what's your secret, man? Like you grew in 8 years, you did. Like it's the people and just a lot of work. We can make everything. We do as much as we possibly can. We stay active in everything that we can, but we also stay out of the way. In a lot of ways.
That's a skill in itself,
man.
That's
a skill in itself. We stay out of the way. We keep to ourselves. We want to make sure, it's a fun thing where you're able to create, but also you realizing really quickly that the creation is greater than the creator in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah,
like that's
like
the way
that.
I feel it.
Yep.
It's now the taqueria has its life of its own outside of me and Nadia. That kind of started it, because now we have over 100 people within our group that work there, that have a livelihood, that we have a responsibility to. And so a lot of the things that we do, that's why I think that's what makes everything about us special, at least in my opinion, right? Is that each individual place has like its own little life, its own little uniqueness, and the people within it is what allows that. So
well, dude, I mean, I'm just blown away by you guys, and I love the direction of where this whole podcast went, because I've looked at you guys as just your whole, you and Nadia and Renee and Roberto. We did an episode with him, and Roberto's he's kind of a quiet guy, but man, we got him in front of that mic, man, and he was great. Like, dude, he blew me away. He was just, I mean, just great people you're surrounding yourself with, right? But I think for the longest time, I think the argument sometimes people have, like, oh, what is Arizona cuisine? You got people from Chicago bringing their food here, people from this, and this. And I look at you guys as like, no, you guys are showcasing what this food, what is Arizona food, right? Like, what is, like, I really, I love what you guys are doing. I really
you.
do. Like it's a taste of place. You keep the many number of times that you use the word community is just kind of hit it right on the head, right? Like it's more than just like what is on the plate. Because honestly, I mean, we didn't really even talk about the food much.
No,
right? No. We didn't talk like the specifics of it, right? The heart behind it, right? But to me, that's really what it's all about. So dude, kudos to you and your team for I mean, you guys are doing huge things, I think, for Arizona food and Southwest food. I love it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, no, we're trying one day at a time.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason why we don't focus too much on the other elements, because I think the core element, like the foundational part, is that it comes from a place of love. It comes from a place of like, hey, listen, like, you know, we go to like, they invite us to K4 Ranch and we get to see the cattle and how they do their things, and you know, that's part of bringing, you know, everything in place. So we're just showcasing what, you know, farmers, what other, like the larger community kind of brings together. And you know, it's a little bit of an uphill battle, but I'm very, you know, we're very, very fortunate, very blessed and happy with, you know, the treatment that Arizona has given us as a community and as an outside element. So we just want to continue to build upon that as much as we can, and you know, and hopefully, you know, make a tiny little dent in what the food scene will be in the future. You know, that's ultimately what it comes down to. That's, as you have kids, or at least in my opinion, for me, the legacy aspect of it becomes important. Like I want to leave this place a little bit better in whatever way that I can than I received it. And you know, that's a huge push of where we're at.
Dude, I love it, man. I love it.
I appreciate you. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. And thank your team for just doing awesome shit. You guys are just, I love it, man. So thank you for having me in, man. I know it's tough getting schedules to align, especially when you got a bunch of places open and all that. So thanks for making the time.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. All right, buddy.